We're joined by CBS Sports NFL analyst Emory Hunt. The Broncos, Emory, well, they escape with a victory and keep their #1 seed hopes alive. But, Emory, this was another game where you would just expect Denver to just run away with this one, put it away against a Chiefs team that doesn't have too much to play for. But another showing of the Broncos maybe playing around with their food when they should be closing out games. Is this something that you maybe worry about at all as we start looking into the postseason picture?
This is about having perspective, right, Kiana? You could either look at this as a callous or a concern. When I say a callous, I'm talking about playing these type of games over the course of a 17-game season in the way they've played, in the manner in which they've played them. Does this prepare you for the postseason, or is this something to be concerned about in the postseason? I think there's a little bit of both, but mostly I'm glad that they're luckily winning these games. And we say luckily, not in a bad sense, because you need a bit of luck in the postseason. That's number one. Second, I like the fact that they're going about this the same way. Hey, we have a concern about your quarterback, Bo Nix, and how he's handling these situations throughout the game. We're never getting ahead of ourselves or getting a big lead, but because you find yourself in these tug-of-war matches all throughout the course of the game, Bo Nix shows up in the final moments and finds a way to get it done. So for me, it's a little bit of both, but I'm leaning more toward the side of the callous because when they get into this situation in the postseason, they now know, hey, we've been like this 9 games out the 17-game regular season. So what's another game here in the postseason where we've shown the ability to lock in when we need it the most and get the job done, and that goes directly to your quarterback, Bo Nix, and how well he has played in these particular situations.
I want to dive a little bit more into that because I was going to ask you, do these certain types of experiences that the Broncos have endured this season, does that give you, some of those notches under your belt? Like, we've been through this kind of experience before, but I want to dive more into, because you talked about Bo Nix, and coming into this game, we talked about how you would rank some of these AFC quarterbacks heading into the postseason, and Bo Nix wasn't at the top of your list. With what you saw here in this matchup here against the Chiefs, they have nothing to lose. Meanwhile, we know what the Broncos are fighting for. Did he give you any confidence as we look at the Broncos? How are you feeling about this team after this game?
Look at the top of this graphic, Kiana. Of course I have confidence. That's 12 comeback wins in the season. Yeah. And Bo Nix been the starter for all of these games. And it's fascinating because we see the obvious concern with Bo Nix in terms of it doesn't always look clean. It doesn't always look great. It doesn't always look consistent. But when they need him to make those plays, he's stepping up. He's making the right play. He's getting them right down the field. He's making great situational football plays. So you have no choice but to trust him in these moments. Now, here's the concern. If you are facing a great team in the playoffs, all these teams in the playoffs have very good defenses. On the opposite side, quarterbacks that are able to play above the X's and O's and make the same plays that Bo Nix has made in the latter part of ball games, if you get down too far in a game with a team that has just as good of a defense, with a quarterback that can continue to put his foot on the gas and pressure you to score, that's where you get into a problem. But in terms of the Bo Nix side of things, the Denver Broncos side of things, they've been in this fight all season long in these situations. So if it came down to it, they're more battle tested. So you can trust Denver and Bo Nix in this moment. The problem will be if they come across a team that has a good offense that's able to score, and now you have to play your consistent game over the course of 60 minutes, that's where they'll get into trouble. That could be in the AFC side of the postseason, or it could be in the Super Bowl.
Okay, so let's put it all aside before we jump to the Chiefs side of this really quickly. You're talking about, we know what this Broncos defense looks like, but do you think with what we've seen this season out of Bo Nix, is that enough to give them enough, let's say, to make it to an AFC championship?
Yes, and here's the reason why. Bo Nix has showed you time and time again over the course of the season that in a situational football moment, he has the it factor, the ability to play above the situation, not necessarily just the X's and O's. If you look at that last drive, we saw Bo Nix do a great job in finding the open guy. He did a great job of avoiding the negative play. He made plays with his legs in terms of getting the yards that were there to be gotten on the ground, and also buying time with his legs, getting outside the pocket to find R.J. Harvey in the back of the end zone. That was a play that was off script. That wasn't a design play. That was Bo Nix. Hey, I'm going to utilize my athleticism. I know where we are in relation to the sideline and to the end zone. I know if I just stay in the fight, buy time, I can find someone working back across the back line, which he did. And so because Bo Nix plays this way a lot, it may not look pretty, But at the end of the day, it comes out beautiful.
But he's getting it done, and that's what matters right there. But meanwhile, Kansas City, I mean, they were looking to play Grinch in this game and very close to being able to do so. But you came into this game, you spoke very highly of Chris Oladokun and him making his first career start. But what did you make of his night? And I know the numbers might not sound gaudy with just 66 yards, but he certainly kept Kansas City in this game.
He looked poised. He looked like a guy that had played a lot of football in college, but he looked like he's been in the NFL since 2022, which he has. He's just been on the practice squad and, as a reserve, a number 3 quarterback, and he looked like the moment wasn't too big for him. The biggest issue or concern for me was the fact that they couldn't get off the field on third downs on defense. They were 11 of 19, Denver was, on third downs, and that right there is going to get you beat. Meanwhile, on the other side, Kansas City's offense was 4 of 11. So they weren't sustaining drives. They had Denver on the ropes. But just in terms of Oladokun, I thought he looked poised. He looked confident. He looked like a guy that belongs. And I thought he made a good case tonight to be their QB2 going into next season behind Patrick Mahomes. So I think that'll be the more interesting takeaway here. The battle between he and Gardner Minshew in the preseason for that QB2 job just made it a lot more interesting about how he handled himself tonight and had these guys with a chance to win or tie at least going down the field at the end of the ball game.
Yeah, he'll likely get another shot at it next week. But I think one of the biggest storylines, at least for Kansas City, we know they're eliminated from playoff contention, but the talk has been about how this just might be Travis Kelce's final game at Arrowhead Stadium. When you sit back and you think about Travis Kelce, you look at his career, you already think first ballot Hall of Famer.
Correct.
With what he's done. But I want to get your take on how you rank him among some of the great tight ends in this sport that we have seen and are seeing.
Listen, Kiana, this is a hard question for this particular position because when you talk about all time, you're talking about since 1920. So you're talking about Mike Ditka, you're talking about Rob Gronkowski, you're talking about John Mackey, you're talking about Kellen Winslow Sr., you're talking about Ozzie Newsome, Charlie Sanders. These are great tight ends, guys that have transformed the position. I would put Travis Kelce, not necessarily the numbers, I would put his impact, I would put him at 10. I would say 10 all time at the tight end position. Again, you're talking about Dave Casper, you're talking about all of these historic tight ends. 10 on a list since 1920, that's great. And if you look at his contemporaries, you're talking about Antonio Gates,
yeah.
You talk about Jason Witten, you're talking about, Jimmy Graham, but he has stood out amongst the rest. And so for me, it's tough. This is a good question because of that position has so many good, it's not like running backs where you kind of pick and choose, but man, you talk about impact at that position. It's only so many few that have made that type of impact. He's top 10. I would put him at 10, but man, that's tough. I know I'm gonna get flack, but that's a great top 10 that I just rattled off on the top of my head. And Kelce is definitely one of the all-time greats at the position.
Absolutely. I think we've been very grateful to witness what he's been able to do, what he has done over the last several years. And if this is the end for Travis Kelce, what
Shannon Sharp, too.
That's a huge one right there, too. There's a lot that we can throw on this list. There's plenty. We could go on and on because there are some elite tight ends that we have seen throughout the history of the NFL, and Travis Kelce adding his name to some of those. But if this was indeed the final home game for Travis Kelce at Arrowhead, I mean, Emory, what a career it has been. He ranks 3rd among tight ends all time in receptions, receiving yards, is 5th in touchdowns, and has 7 seasons of 1,000 yards receiving. It is safe to say we will definitely see him one day in Canton. From playoff positioning at the top to draft positioning at the bottom, we break down the latest postseason picture and the early look at who could be picking first in the 2026 draft. That's all coming next. You're watching CBS Sports HQ.